pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Imagine you're over the rainbow in a fantastic land of tiny people half your size and yellow brick roads that can lead anywhere. A land of flying monkeys and the Wicked Witch of the West. A land of danger and excitement. And fun. Follow the yellow brick road and find the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. We hear he is the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever, oh, ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does.
A scarecrow that dances, a lion that sings, a tin man that talks, a wizard that whizzes, and Dorothy, and you.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz. Imagine.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and ArmchairOscars.com. And joining me on Under the Rainbow is my co-host, the critic, legend, historian for TalkMovieMe.com, the one and only Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
What? Nobody gets in to see the wizard. Not nobody, not no how.
But they do anyway.
They do. And he takes them there. To himself, ultimately.
Yeah.
Because he is practically every character in the Emerald City.
Welcome to the other side of the rainbow. Before we
Not the other side of the wind. That's a whole different.
That's a whole different ballgame. Before we take a trip over the rainbow, why don't you tell the folks where they can find us?
Well, if you feel like taking a trip on the old internet, you can find us on iTunes and YouTube. All of our back episodes are at thepodbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can throw a tip into our virtual tip jar on Patreon or follow us on Twitter at the exact same hashtag at pod_bay. Jerry?
Well,
Back
this
to you,
week
Jerry.
we're talking. This week we're talking about the 80 years. Oh my God,
man.
80 freaking years.
Can I just
of
say
The
how
Wizard
much
of
I
Oz.
love this movie? Like,
I do too.
I just adore this movie, and I've gotten to see it in the theater twice.
I saw it in the theater a couple of years ago.
I saw
On
it.
its 75th anniversary.
I actually saw it in its 60th.
Do you find it strange to watch a movie like this in the theater? Not just because you've seen it exclusively on television, but because
You know every
it
damn
wasn't
word to it.
it wasn't filmed to be in that aspect ratio. So when I saw it in a theater, that big, beautiful widescreen is containing an image that is basically a square.
Right, it's like a third of what the actual screen size is.
Right. I had the same thing with the old vintage Disney films when I went to see Snow White. It was like the aspect ratio, and of course I don't want them to whiten it out, obviously.
All right.
But it is a little strange to watch a film that was made before that widescreen process.
It is, but I don't know. It didn't really bother me at all. The same year, 1999, that I saw this in the theater, I also saw Gone with the Wind in its 60th anniversary for the first time.
That's a long sit.
I had never seen Gone with the Wind, and I watched it in the theater for the first time in an old movie theater. So this was like
Lucky you.
not really padded seats.
Oh yeah, those hard wooden. It's like sitting in a baseball stadium.
I saw Gone with the Wind in the theater that my grandfather used to play the organ for during silent movies.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
my great grandfather.
Yeah.
And my great aunt and my grandfather would go when they were kids, and sit there for free
Mm-hmm.
because Dad was playing the organ accompanying the
Mm-hmm.
movies, uh, which was awesome, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because this would have been back in 1917, 18,
Mm-hmm.
19, like 100 years ago.
Can I just say something? And forgive me. This is a very, very weird headspace that we're in. We are doing a mental whiplash
If
here
you
because
listen to
the
last
tele
week's episode, which was
we're
Pulp
recording
Fiction,
this we're recording this episode about 20, 30 minutes after we just finished recording our episode on Pulp Fiction. So this is a real
listen,
whiplash.
I can top that because I watched in the same day
Hmm.
Pulp Fiction, Wizard of Oz, and then I went to Woodstock because
Yeah,
that's got a 50th that I think we're going to do a
because that's what you
special.
do.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
mean that's what you do. That was all in one day. That was complicated.
Yeah. But
And
this is very strange. We're talking about this hardcore, very fun but hardcore kind of crime comedy drama. And then we're coming to what has got to be the sweetest movie
ever made.
ever made.
This is this is the epitome of the family film. There is no film that is better suited for a family than this movie.
And I have a theory that I think it is possible that this movie may have been seen by more people than anything else in the world.
That's
It's
possible.
and I think one of the reasons is because it comes to us as children.
Well,
And
that and before Christmas Story, they ran it for 24/7 and around the holiday season.
not really. Let me tell you the story of how this happened to me. Um, until I think basic cable,
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz only came on once a year, and I know this because CBS almost always aired it the weekend after my birthday.
Hmm.
So my birthday is on November 14th.
Right, I was going to say
And
just
then
like a week before Thanksgiving.
2 weeks later is Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So the Wizard of Oz always came somewhere in that space between the 14th and whatever day Thanksgiving fell on.
Didn't they start running it after the game on Thanksgiving for a long time too?
Not that I know of.
There's a
Not
movie
that I
that
was.
came on after it like every year, but I think now it's A Wonderful Life.
Well, it used to come on at that time. Always came on CBS.
Hmm.
And like I say, it before in the years before home video, it only came on once a year,
Right.
and it was an event,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I saw it. That's how most of us saw it. Those
I
of us,
definitely saw it on television first,
mhm,
um,
as did I.
but I think I didn't see it sit down front to back until I was older. Like I'd seen bits and pieces or enough long chunks to, I'd seen the whole movie,
Yeah,
but I can't remember ever seeing it beginning to end in one sitting.
right.
So, that was a fun thing when I was going to college in
Mhm.
1999, the summer before. I
Yeah.
got my first PC that was just going to be mine, and I got a
Hmm.
DVD player in it. That was my first DVD player. The first movies that I bought, the first DVD movies that I bought, were The Wizard of Oz and All Quiet on the Western Front.
Wow, wow.
Talk about a jolt. Talk about a jump between subject matters. Uh,
Which one did you watch first?
um, I think All Quiet.
That's good because you need a palate cleanser after that. And All Quiet is like 3 hours long, and
No, it's not.
this. How long is it? It does. It feels like it's a long
It's
movie
like
though.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Something okay because now Wizard of Oz is not that long.
Wizard of Oz
Wizard
is
of
an
Oz.
hour and 42 minutes.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was shorter than that.
Nope.
Well, this movie.
I did too. That's why I looked at it last night when I put it on. I was like, how long am I going to be staying up for this? Am I going to watch the rest of this in the morning? But it was 102 minutes. So
Last week we talked about how Pulp Fiction was such a massive piece of a revolution of independent film. This is just a complete opposite. This is an absolute studio product.
This is the like upper levels of studio production.
Right.
This is Mervyn LeRoy, MGM, Victor Fleming. I mean,
Victor Fleming was like the third director.
I thought he was like the fifth director.
Yeah, they kept rotating directors.
They
out.
did. They would have people come on for like a couple of days. I think George Cukor was on for like 3 days, and the thing that he did was de-glamorize Dorothy because they really had her made up looking like a starlet, and they
put makeup on her.
Right, and so he dressed her down to make her look more Midwesterny. And I think he shot the over the rainbow sequence too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a real problem with Judy Garland because
a lot of people had a problem with Judy Garland starting around this time.
They had a time issue with Judy Garland because Judy Garland was 17,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a late bloomer, and she was developing.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept having to change her dress size up top because she kept growing.
Yeah.
And every time they put the outfit on her, it was like they had to take it out, and they had to hide it because she's supposed to be playing an 8-year-old girl. So they kept trying to keep up with it.
8 via 14 at the least. Like,
Yeah,
she was
17 at the time.
Yeah, I never got 8 from her, even when I was a kid. I'm like,
Well,
okay, she's a kid, but 8.
Yeah, 14 maybe.
Yeah.
Judy Garland, bless her heart, is a cautionary tale of what that business run amok does to you physically, mentally, emotionally.
Right.
Because at this point, and I always say, windows of the movies are the window, are a window onto the times in which they're made. Here she is, young and beautiful. She's a teenager. She's one of the biggest stars in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see her just at the edge of when it all starts to crash on her.
Right.
Because she's, like I say, she's young and beautiful. She's talented. She's got energy. She had energy. I mean, even when she was in A Star Is Born. But at this point, they're giving her drugs to make her sleep. They're giving her drugs to wake her up.
Mm-hmm.
They put her on a schedule that can only be described as brutal.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was literally going from one set to another to make this, and then back to make an Andy Hardy movie, and then over to this to make this movie. And it was just...
Wasn't it the Harvey Girls was around the same time too?
Yeah. And she's doing, summer stock and all of that stuff. And she's just, it's absolutely pulling at her. And they don't care.
No, because they're making money off of her.
They're making money off of her. And this is before, I think, this was before the Coogan Law. Yeah. And so they can, and she's under contract with, and when you were under contract with those studios, they owned you.
Mm-hmm. Lock, stock, and barrel. Yeah.
I remember DeForest Kelley said they would have you under contract, and if you objected or if you didn't really like what you were doing, you could be put on leave without pay.
Right. But not allowed to go to another studio because you're under contract. Yeah.
Betty Davis later would break some of that when she made Of Human Bondage.
Mm-hmm. And, that's ironic.
That's ironic. And because she wanted to go over to another studio, and Jack Warner didn't want her to do that, and they killed her Oscar chance because of that. Mm-hmm. These petty old men running these studios. None were more petty, I think, than Louis B. Mayer.
Louis B. Mayer was the worst.
My God,
It was so bad. I mean, Jack Warner had a lot of problems, and what's his name, Fox, and all of those at the different studios. But man, Mayer was an asshole.
I think it was I can't remember which studio had it. I think it was Harry Cohn when he died. Red Skelton gave his eulogy, and he said,
Oh, that was
"Sarah the Beautiful."
Columbia.
It was at Columbia, and he gave gave Harry Cohn's eulogy, and he said, "Well, you can't ever say he didn't give the people what they wanted." But I mean, the stories that persist about these, particularly Judy Garland,
Yeah.
and it took a toll because when she started losing money, when they were not making money with her anymore, they dropped her like a hot potato.
Mm-hmm.
And
Addicted to everything under the sun,
yeah,
with no support. Yeah.
I think it is not. There's no better story that fits into how Judy Garland was treated than the night that she was nominated for A Star Is Born.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the hospital giving birth and to her son, and they had the cameras set up and the lights and all of that, microphones, so when she won, she could give her acceptance speech from her hospital bed. They gave the Oscar to Grace Kelly.
Yeah.
And the minute that her name was announced, they start taking the lights down and taking the cameras down and moving everything out, and just leave her alone sitting there. And nobody said anything to her. That's how Judy Garland was treated.
Yeah.
And that's indicative of all of this. But the thing is about The Wizard of Oz is that it captures a moment really before all of that.
Yeah, this is before all of that really started happening. I mean, they were running her ragged, but
it didn't really get bad until after this.
This was before it everything kind of came to a head. And she is so lovable in this. Everybody is lovable in this. I mean, her three I will never not love the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion.
I want to say this about this, and this has to be noted because it's starting to become an internet thing. This is a movie primarily with women in the lead.
Mm-hmm.
There are three women who drive this story.
Yeah.
There's Judy Garland, there's Billy Burke, and there's Margaret Hamilton. They're the ones driving this story.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And it's sort of been sucked into that weird internet whirlwind, with Daisy Ridley and Gal Gadot,
Yeah.
those internet Neanderthals. Woman, make things bad.
Yeah.
The ones who can't stand that.
Yeah.
The ones who just can't stand a movie with a woman in the lead, that is not a romantic comedy or something.
I can't.
This movie is getting sucked into that.
Really?
And yeah, it really is starting to get sucked into that.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's only been around for 80 years,
Yeah. What do they say about Gone with the Wind when they're not talking about the...
Yeah, seriously.
I mean,
believe me, Gone with the Wind's got a whole...
Well, that's got a whole other set of problems, which is largely why we didn't get to it yet this year. We might not get to it this year.
Gone with the Wind is a whole other set of
I still
issues
remember you were like, oh, let's do Gone with the Wind in January, and then you came up with something else to do, the Rocky movies, and you're like, well, let's move Gone with the Wind to February, and I said, Jerry, do you really want to talk about Gone with the Wind during Black History Month?
Yeah, I'm learning Black History Month. Yeah.
You were like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that did happen, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
You had one of those granddad from Boondocks moments. Oh yeah, that did happen, didn't it? So I don't know if we're gonna get to that.
You watch some of these movies from the 30s, and it's like it was a Dave Chappelle. You get so mad, it's so racist. You don't even get mad. It's like, damn, that was racist.
Yeah.
But this movie though, it's like it's so spare.
Yeah.
that you can read anything into it.
Oh yeah. I I love, the first time you watch it, when I was a kid and I saw it, and they did the transition between the sepia and the Technicolor, because
Oh, that's wonderful.
they did not shoot any inch of this on actual black and white film, and you can tell that because
Right.
this does not look like any other black and white movie that was around at the
I think
time.
the sepia works better
Oh yeah,
because it reminds me of old photographs.
right. And so when they did that, uh, it was just this stunning moment that they really didn't have to do anything for. They just
Right.
put different. They just exposed it differently. Well, not even exposed it differently. They processed it differently in
Hmm.
the lab because they were using color film. You could tell that they were using color
Yeah.
film, and they were just draining the color out. They were
They're using color stock.
right, right, and then they just kind of bled it out in the processing part. Um,
It
there's a
works to great
lot.
effect. It works to great effect because it is a contrast to the world in which he is living,
Mhm.
to the world in which he enters.
Because I don't know how many people have been through the Midwest, but it pretty much is sepia toned.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Especially when this was set. I mean,
Uh, but it's that's pretty much it. But like I say, the movie tells you a lot,
mhm,
but it is generally so spare that you can put on it whatever you want. The idea is that, um, and you can identify also with this kid who's she's living alone with her aunt and uncle, who are way too old to be parents, really. They never
yeah.
tell you what happened to her parents. Um,
They kind of bring it up in the movie that we're probably not really going to talk about, which is Oz the Great and Powerful, which I didn't even watch to prep for this because I knew we weren't going to talk about it.
no,
Um,
thank you. I'm just gonna say
it
no,
was
thank you.
parts of it were okay.
I'm just gonna say no, thank you.
So, but they do kind of bring that up a little bit in that. Not much, not much, but
Um, I don't get or want a sequel to an 80-year-old movie. It's not.
oh, it was a
It
prequel.
it doesn't.
The
It doesn't
sequel
matter.
was
It's like,
Return to Oz in
oh God.
'85, which was appallingly
Oh,
bad.
that was horrifying.
Oh, it was everything that this movie isn't.
When a chicken is the most interesting character in the movie, you got some problems.
Yes.
But
And then
this
there was
movie,
that weird. I don't know if Riff Tracks did this weird Oz movie. Um,
what was that?
I'm looking for it because I just watched it like last month. Uh, but it was bonkers. It was this like super duper duper low grade, no money, wonderful land of Oz.
Yeah.
Um, the
Oh, listen.
the main
If
character was a guy with a pumpkin head. Like,
Oh, Jack Pumpkinhead. That's from the story. That's from the books.
yeah, it is.
Mm. The thing is, if you look anywhere in the world and you have a movie that is popular,
Mhm.
and I mean anything, you will find a cheap knockoff in every country in the world.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You will find
Oh
a Brazilian Wizard of Oz. You
yeah.
will find a Turkish Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
You will find an Italian Wizard of Oz. You will find an Ethiopian Wizard of Oz.
I will
You will
say though that
find
the Turkish Star Wars is pretty fun.
Turkish Star Wars is a lot of fun. I'll tell you what else is fun is Brazilian Planet of the Apes. That's kind of
Ooh.
hilarious.
I haven't seen that. I need to
Yeah,
find
that's
that.
kind of hilarious.
Ooh.
But yeah, and all the versions of Star Wars, and all those
Starting
different.
with Hardware Wars and going
There's a
on from
Russian
there.
version of Rocky,
Wait,
the first Rocky.
that's funny. Did they ever do a Russian version of Rocky 4?
No,
They should
because Russia has its standards.
have. Yeah, well.
But honestly, if this movie, when you get down to it, it's like, and I said earlier that when you're a kid and you watch this, this is generally a lot of people come to this movie when they're kids,
Oh yeah, invariably.
and so you can identify
The,
with this little girl who is she's lonely.
mhm.
She doesn't appear to have any friends
Except Toto, her
uh,
dog.
except Toto. And I mean, how many of us fall in love with our pets when we're kids? Um,
How could you not fall in love with
how
Toto?
could you not fall in love with this little guy? He is just,
He's
is that not the best dog in the world?
absolutely. I mean, the only other dog that I would probably rather have is Asta from the Thin
Yeah,
Man series.
yeah. I mean,
I
he's just not a
love
great
Toto.
dog.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize how many movies don't know how to deal with dogs. I mean,
Hmm.
how many good dog movies are there? But
That don't end
they,
up murdering the dog at the end? Not many.
right, right. Um,
That's why I don't watch dog movies.
she wants to be. She doesn't want to be noticed, but she just
Right.
wants to go somewhere where she makes an impact, where people pay attention to her.
She wants to go where everybody knows her name.
Right. There's a bar in Boston.
Right.
But she's, and she sings about that.
Hmm.
And the funny thing is, and this is a massive studio thing, and they had to fight to get this in the movie. The whole movie stops so she can have this 3-4 minutes to sing this absolutely beautiful
Beautiful
song.
song. Oh, God. I.
And I don't care what kind of a cynic you are, you can't help but be touched by that
No.
because her heart is in it.
Hmm.
Every note of that song, her heart is in it.
And the only other person that I ever heard give as emotional a rendition as Garland did was I'm going to mispronounce his name, but he was a Hawaiian ukulele singer that did he kind of merged Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World" with "Somewhere
Oh,
Over the
is?
Rainbow." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's that is just a beautiful, beautiful song.
I want that played at my funeral.
Oh man, my sister had it played at her wedding.
Ah, that is beautiful. Um, but she runs away because she thinks she's causing problems. And I love
No,
the
doesn't she run
idea.
away to save Toto because
Noel Langley decided he was the writer who came in. He was a script doctor. He came in, and he was the one who made the brilliant decision to have the fantasy characters be the field hands on the farm,
and the guy that she meets.
and the Mrs. Gulch,
Right.
and have them establish them as the characters that she meets later.
Right.
Because that tornado. Let's talk about this tornado because that tornado is terrifying.
That it is, and the way that they do it, I mean,
Because you can see it in the background. It's
yeah,
there.
process shots were newish at this
Mhm.
at this point. The optical printer was not used all that much yet.
The tornado was made out of bandages and muslin,
Hmm.
and it was put on a track
Yeah.
that ran along the stage. And when I found this fascinating because I'll admit I was fooled until they explained this on one of the DVDs. When her house falls
Hmm.
toward the camera, what they did was they took a model of Dorothy's house
Hmm.
and they had a canvas that was painted like the Kansas sky, and they went up to the top of the rigging and they filmed the camera and they dropped the house onto the canvas and they rolled it backwards so that it looks like the house is tumbling toward you.
Hmm.
So there's actually footage of somebody dropping the house onto the canvas and it hits it.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they roll it backwards. I'll admit, until they told me that, I could not have explained it to you. And I'm sorry if I spoiled it, but that's kind of brilliant.
Mhm.
You know, I was talking about the fantasy characters established as the hands on the farm. I think they go a little too overboard because she falls in the pen and somebody saves her, and he's like, and of course the fat guy is cowardly.
Mhm.
Eh, eh.
Mhm.
And the one of them says, you know, it's as if you don't have any brains at all.
Right. Uh-huh.
This is not a movie about subtlety. Okay.
No, I mean, this was for kids. They weren't trying to be subtle. They wanted
Yeah.
the kids to know that these people were the same people that they saw earlier. Um, I do. There is some distinctive liberties taken from the book with this.
The term loosely based.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
term is loosely based.
like, I couldn't believe when I read the book the poor Tin Man's real history.
Dear God.
Oh my god. How the witch basically just replaced him piece by piece with metal until he didn't have a heart and then he froze like that. Like he was a real person.
Basically, she did to what they did to Ash in Star Trek Discovery.
Right. Or Nebula in the MCU.
Or what's her name? The cyborg in Discovery.
Right. Oh
Ariam.
yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's just terrifying, you know.
It is horrifying, and
But they don't tell you any of that, and it's funny because when, can I just say I love them. I love the Munchkins. I know it's politically incorrect, but I love the Munchkins.
well,
Just-
I mean, liking the little people as characters is not apolitically correct. It's referring to them as not little people. I mean, referring to them as the Munchkins, which they do in the credits, it's kind of dehumanizing, and
Yeah.
they
well, they call them the singer midgets.
right. So, but I love them. The way that they each bring out their characters,
Right.
I think is really good.
They're adorable.
They are.
I'm sorry, they are. They're adorable, and it's like each one has their own little quirk and has their own little thing about them, and it's funny, and they have their own home.
Hmm.
Here they are. They have their own home. They have Munchkin Land,
And they're hatched, apparently.
and yeah, apparently hatched. I don't get that. And how many murders do they have in this town? Because they have a coroner.
Oh yeah, they do. They do.
They have a sheriff.
The moral of the story
What
is
is-
don't piss off a Munchkin. I guess
Forget it, Jake. It's Munchkin
it's
Land.
Munchkin Land. Suddenly, I need that.
But it's funny though, is that she gets to this beautiful, wonderful place, and boy, is there anything more beautiful than Technicolor? I mean,
No.
Oh my
not,
God.
Not even the plastic plants.
not even the place. Well, I got an answer to that. Because every time you look at this movie, when you see the plastic plants, and you see all of the fakery, and you see the matte paintings in the background, the way I've been able to deal with that. This is a storybook.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a living, breathing, moving storybook.
Oh, I'm not saying that the plastic plants bother me. I loved noting that when I would watch it, it's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, yeah, they're on a studio, clearly,
It's on a soundstage.
right? But you know, who cares?
Yeah.
I
You can
want to
nitpick this
know.
movie to death, but I mean,
I want to know who maintains the Yellow Brick Road, because in other stories
well,
based on
if you
this,
believe Return to Oz, apparently they don't.
well, yeah,
The problem with to Return to Oz is she finds that the Yellow Brick Road's been torn up, but they never fix it.
hmm
That's my issue. Anyway,
And where does the Red Brick Road go? Because there's two roads.
that goes to the red light district.
Well, it spins out. I guess the Yellow Brick Road starts in Munchkin Land. Is Munchkin Land
Hmm.
like the absolute outside of Oz? Like,
I don't know.
because it
Because apparently this is the throughway to the Emerald City.
right, but this is where the Yellow Brick Road starts.
Right.
If you see,
And
like it
it
starts
is.
in that spiral, but it doesn't end at the Emerald City. I think it goes out the other end.
Hmm. Well, apparently it's a throughway because this is the only place it goes.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think like Rome, all roads lead to the Emerald City.
mm,
Um, because there are those different kingdoms and stuff that have different colored roads that go from one place to the other. There's,
right.
I in the book they really go into more like there's the ceramic people and the all of the bizarre candy people and whatnot that they
Yeah.
have that ended up being in the movie we're not talking about, but also in animated sequels and stuff like that that have come after.
Right.
Um,
Well, the thing is, the idea here is to create this fantastic world, and she wants something. Temper of a Broadway musical. She has to sing her "I Want" song,
mhm.
and then she gets into the situation she's in, and she meets these three characters who are all, in a lot of ways, representative of a lot of different things.
Mhm.
And I'm going to talk about them. One is when she meets the Scarecrow, and he doesn't have any brains. But did you notice that he's the guy who's always getting them out of trouble?
I think you're supposed to notice that.
Yeah.
And the Tin Man is the one that cares the most, and he's always crying
Well,
and
and the Scarecrow is the one who is representative of, everybody's always telling you that you're stupid and you're brainless and you're not thinking, and yet you grab onto, and you know that you have your own intellect.
Mhm.
It's just he's missing what's in his, he's missing the gift that he has.
right.
Um, Tin Man has the capacity to love. He just thinks that without this heart, he doesn't.
Right.
He's a very passionate individual.
Mhm.
The lion, and I'm going to get into this, and I'm going here. I think this character, and this doesn't come from me, I think this character is effectively an icon for outsiders,
Okay.
in particular gay people,
Mhm.
because the temper of this character, as played by Burt Lahr, is effectively to let you know that being a sissy is wrong, or being scared, or being, whatever.
Right.
I mean, when he's singing his song, he says, "I'm afraid there's no denying, I'm just a dandelion."
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
And he
Yeah. Yeah.
waves
Yeah.
his hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very fey gesture. And so there's that. And this whole movie effectively is about characters who have to find, and like a lot of gay people, have to build a family on their own because they've been rejected by their own.
Mhm.
And this is about pulling this family together, these people together to solve this problem, do what they've got to do. And of course, one of the funniest lines in the entire movie is the Scarecrow. Of course, some people do go both ways.
I also love his line where he's like, I don't have a brain. And Dorothy's like, well, I mean, but you talk. And he says, yeah, but a lot of people without brains do an awful lot of talking.
Doing a lot of talking, don't they? Yeah,
I've always loved that statement.
yeah. Um,
Which is actually pseudo-referenced in The Phantom Menace.
mhm. Yeah.
When Jar Jar Binks is like, but I spec, and he goes, you don't have to be intelligent to speak.
No kidding. Sometimes not intelligent people do a lot of talking.
Yeah, they do.
But Dorothy, for me, is always very much a character of the time. Because to me, she represents the promise of a larger, better world.
Mhm.
All those little girls who got on the bus and went to Hollywood, hoping to make it,
Right.
and it didn't work out. That's in a lot of ways she's indicative of that.
Right.
And the witch is indicative of what they found.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's out to harm you. And
Or the wizard who's out to con you.
right. Is this witch not one of the scariest characters you've ever seen in your life?
She
I mean-
stands as one of the great movie villains.
She is a great movie villain. And I love what Margaret Hamilton said. Said my agent called and said, well, they're doing The Wizard of Oz and they want you to try out for it. And she says, oh, I've loved that story since I was a little kid. What part do they want? And he says, oh, the witch. And she says, the witch? And he said, well, yeah, what else? But it's interesting. It's like I said, the story is so spare that you can put on it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So my interpretation of these fantasy characters is because they don't take the time to explain themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The Scarecrow's just been hanging there on a nail. The Tin Man has been standing there rusting since it rained.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cowardly Lion, puts up this front because he's supposed to be the king of the jungle, but he's putting up this front.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as he gets bopped in the nose, he turns into a coward.
Right.
And so it's really they're helping her find her way back home, but she's helping them find themselves.
Right.
In a lot of ways, and helping them find who they are. Now, when they get to the Emerald City, I'm going to tell you, when I was a little kid, there's a part of this movie where I had to leave the room.
Oh.
And that's the scene where they meet, quote unquote, the wizard.
Oh. That's kind of scary.
Let me tell you, when you see that giant head with the flames coming up, my dad used to watch Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that terrified me was over the closing credits. There was a
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
the closing credits. At the very end of the closing credits, there was always this weird
Guy with a big head. Yeah.
Martian face.
Uh-huh.
It was Balok's puppet.
Yeah.
It was an episode called The Corbomite Maneuver. And that scared me to death. And when I saw this in The Wizard of Oz, all I could think of was that thing in Star Trek. It scared me. And also because there's these flames and all of this, he's threatening them, and this thing.
I'll say this though, I am 100% on board with Oz's workday.
Yeah. Yes.
Get up at 12,
Uh-huh.
go to work at 1, take an hour lunch, and at 2 we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an ideal day for me.
That's an ideal day. I mean, hey,
Although, it immediately falls apart because they finish that line as they pull up to the salon where there are people working.
Right. Well, they have guests.
Yeah. Well, see, I have always also loved that they have a straw stuffing station and a Tin Man buffing station, and like,
How convenient.
when has this ever been come up before? Do
How
they
many
get
scarecrows and Tin Man?
a lot of metal people and walking talking scarecrows in Oz? I mean, I get the Manny Petty stations for the Lion and Dorothy, but
Put the buffing station for the.
I mean that wasn't just put in because he came up. I mean that was and the straw station. I mean, I've always loved that. I've always thought that that was like just phenomenal that they had the stuff that they needed right there. Like,
Yeah,
and you don't care that
yeah,
it's there.
yeah.
You also don't care that they're forcing people to work past their overtime.
And I love the fact that they're playing with the. I love the fact that they're playing with the Technicolor
Mhm.
because the horse of a
Of
different
course, of a
color.
different color.
Every time you see him, he's a different color. At one point, he's yellow, another point, he's purple, and it just keeps changing.
Do you know how they got that effect?
How's that?
They put gelatin, like Jello packets, on the horse.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But it was a real problem because the horse kept licking it off because it was sweet. But yeah, that was Jello.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot of stuff about this movie. The history of this movie, oh my God, the history of this movie is just unbelievable. All the stuff that went on. Um, the Tin Man, was originally Buddy Ebsen.
Yeah, but he was allergic to the makeup.
Well, they put on his face silver powder,
Hmm.
and he inhaled it,
Yeah.
and it coated his lungs, and he had to be taken to the hospital. And he was in the hospital long enough that they had to recast it, so they put Jack Haley in the role, and they changed it from powder to paste.
Hmm.
And everybody on this movie was absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
Because Jack Haley could not go to lunch. He had to be leaned up against a board
Uh
and be fed his lunch.
huh.
Burt Lahr couldn't take that thing off.
Ugh.
They just had to, he couldn't get out of that suit. And that suit was huge.
Very heavy.
And it was a real animal skin.
Right.
And of course, the problems with Judy Garland.
Mhm.
And if Margaret Hamilton
Margaret Hamilton
was set
got
on
burned.
fire.
Yeah.
And they had to get her out and rush her to the first aid station because if fire reached her makeup, it would get under it, start boiling her skin.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So she
yeah.
was shut down, I think, for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because of that. And it was
Uh-huh.
just all this different stuff. The wires kept snapping on the flying monkeys.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And they kept asking, because they kept seeing the wires, and they kept asking for thinner and thinner wires, and they kept snapping, and they kept falling. And then all of these little, what you call it? All of these little legends came up. There's supposedly a man that hung himself.
That's been thoroughly debunked. It's actually
The word is bullshit.
it's actually it's a llama or some animal that's in the background.
It's
an emu that they were going to use in another scene that ended up getting cut. But it was in the back, and it just looks like a little person.
They were hanging around this house. And basically what it is you can see it in the background. It leans down to eat whatever's on the ground.
Mm-hmm. But it
or drink
looks,
whatever.
The way that it turns, it looks like a little person hanging from a rope, and it's
Right.
very much not.
The first time I saw that, and when I heard the story, the first time I saw that, I thought that's a bird.
Yeah, yeah. Every time I've looked at it, I'm like, well, that's a bird. I don't know why there's a bird there, but that's
Right.
not a person.
Yeah.
And yet the myth really stayed alive
Persists.
for a long. It's still, people will still say you can see a guy that hung himself, and it's like no, you can't, because it didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Quite that way.
So, Uh, I,
What's I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
the events in this movie, just that this, like Harry Potter, is all about a woman who wants to kill a child.
Hmm.
That is darkish. I mean, like that is bleak, man. Like that is it's not quite
It
as bad
is.
as somebody as a guy devoting his life to murdering a child like
Right.
Voldemort, but it's still unsettling. It's like I want your
Well,
shoes and I'm going to murder you for them.
every time you see the witch in this thing, she's doing something that is utterly terrifying.
Oh yeah. And
The scene
just
where she goes to
terrible.
get the shoes off of her and the little lightning bolts come out of
Yeah,
her
yeah.
fingers.
Oh no,
You know,
that they
she's
come from the spell that's on the shoes onto her.
spell that's on the shoes, right? Well, and she's standing on the roof of that house, and what was the line?
How about a
Come
little
on, fire,
fire,
scarecrow!
Scarecrow?
And throws
A
this
fireball.
terrifying fireball. It's
Yet she needs a torch to light the end of her broom on fire to taunt the Scarecrow in her castle.
right, right. Can we talk about the water?
Yes.
Because I still have not figured this one out.
I don't understand it either, but
She throws a bucket of water at her and she melts.
yeah.
I,
Uh-huh.
there is an entire book
Mhm.
dedicated to explaining the history of the Wicked Witch up
Wicked.
to this
Yeah.
point.
Uh-huh.
And up to this point, and it's like, I don't even.
It was a
That's
book
fascinating.
and a Broadway musical.
Yeah, but Birth the Broadway musical, yes.
Oh,
Um, but it's just interesting. Like I say, you can't pick this apart. The one thing that I really am on the edge of nitpicking, and I don't want to, is when Glinda comes back and she says, "Why didn't you tell me all this to begin with?" And
well,
she
because
says,
you
"Well, you
wouldn't have
wouldn't."
believed it.
What?
You know what
Are you
though?
kidding me?
I totally buy that. Because
I
if she would
don't.
if in Munchkinland Glinda would have said to her, "All you have to do is think about your home and click your heels 3 times and you'll be back home." Dorothy would have looked at her like she was high. Like, yeah, no, that's stupid. How do I get out of here? Just click your heels.
Yeah.
Bitch, tell me how to get out of here. I find it completely reasonable because who in their right mind would come from our world into this world and they say, "Oh, just click your heels together and you'll go home." It's like,
Well, how much different is it that you're just a tornado just flung you over the rainbow?
well, I mean, she's still processing an awful lot.
Yeah.
She got thrown into this magical world. She killed somebody.
Hmm.
She
Accidentally.
murdered. Well, it's still
Manslaughter.
manslaughter. And now she's being hailed as the savior of a people.
Hmm.
She's a
Yeah.
little kid. And then she has to then to on top of that, a good witch who floated in and floated out on a bubble tells her that she could just click her heels together. I think that would stretch credibility.
I think by that point I would buy it.
I wouldn't. But I have trust issues, so
No, well,
I wouldn't trust him anyway.
Dorothy apparently doesn't.
No,
Dorothy has no trust issues at
no,
all.
she'll just pick up with whomever. Well, unless apparently they're ugly, and then she's afraid.
Well, and the other thing is, and I always say this, I admire a kids film that is not afraid to frighten a child
It is
because
so scary.
children have emotions watching movies just like adults do.
Mhm.
I can't stand a movie that is so mamby-pamby that it won't at least deal with the darker passages.
Right, and
This one,
I'm not one to give Don Bluth credit for much.
mm,
Um, but when I was a kid and An American Tail came out, I saw that at home. I didn't get 10 minutes in. As soon as the cats raided their home, scared the piss out of me, and I just went to my room and I didn't come out. I didn't see the whole movie until like 6 years later at school.
You mean American Tail? We're Russian immigrants, but nobody used the J word.
Right.
We're named Moskowitz. We're Russian immigrants. Nobody used the J word.
Nope. But I mean, that sequence was genuinely terrifying. The rest
It
of the
was.
movie is placid, but that.
Well, Land Before Time wasn't any better.
No, that's true. Whew.
I mean, Don Bluth was really wanting to return to, the template of Walt Disney and the template. That's fine.
And nothing illustrates that more than Rockadoodle.
Oh God. Well, I'm talking about making the film at least somewhat scary
Guess how
to
many
create a
people
sense of
forgot
drama.
about that movie? Oof.
I actually find creating Russian immigrants and not having them having them be Jewish, but never saying that they're Jewish. I actually find that more terrifying than anything else.
Yeah.
Than the cats and the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
That's a cultural scrubbing that I'm just not comfortable with.
Yeah, no. I'm not a huge fan of Don Bluth stuff anyway, but
There's a handful of movies from Don Bluth that I like, and I stick with those, and I'm good with it. And other than that,
man, All Dogs Go to Heaven is just sad.
you can never come back.
It's so sad. And they made a sequel.
And they have Burt Reynolds, and he doesn't have the trademark laugh. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah, they made a sequel. Yeah.
Let's have a movie about dogs dying. Let's follow it with a sequel. What?
Is this a movie about pet death? Are you kidding me?
It's better than Pet Sematary, though.
Oh, we'll get to that. Oh, boy, will we get to that. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, this is just a magical film.
Did you find this movie to be kind of a thumb to the eye when you found out it was a dream sequence? You found out the whole thing was a dream.
Yes,
I've still never been able to deal with that.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because every other iteration of the story is that it's real.
She stays there.
Well,
Yeah,
she
that
goes
it's real.
back, but she ends up going back a few times to Oz.
Right.
It's kind of, yeah. I didn't like that it was a dream. It was kind of like Alice in Wonderland, because the animated Disney film takes place when she's little, but they made so many others that she went back to Wonderland and all of that, but they still were trying to play it off as a not real.
Well, the difference is that the difference between The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland is that Alice in Wonderland is not supposed to be taken literally. Alice in Wonderland is not a story that is generally suited for the cinematic form, because Alice in Wonderland was written to be a play on words. It was written to be very meta as far as its literary origins. It was a dance, a song. It was songs of nonsense words and things like that.
Right.
It was not meant to be it was not meant to be literalized.
Right.
And so, other than Walt Disney's version, the early 1951 version, I've never seen a version of Alice in Wonderland that really understood its origins.
Right.
And got it right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Winnie the Pooh when he's when he's walking on the words and the sentences, and he gets wrapped up, tangled in the text on the page. That's Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
Wizard of Oz is much more literal. I don't believe, and I have read I've read L. Frank Baum's book.
Yeah, me too.
I don't believe you can actually film that. Um,
No, they
I don't.
tried.
They tried. If you've seen the 1925 version,
Ooh, with Oliver Hardy.
the 1925
God,
version
that's
is
so bad.
horrendous.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. It is all over the place.
There is nothing coherent about that movie at all.
Nothing. And it's racist.
Oh yeah, yeah it is.
There's an actor in it named Spencer Bell, who's a talented actor. He was African American, and his name in the film is, and I am not making this up, G. How Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie.
There's
I sat down and watched that one night. I was like, "This is
I
horrendous."
saw that once and I couldn't make head nor tails of it, and it was so effective. Yeah, that movie's
I don't
terrible.
even know what the story was supposed to be.
I don't either, and
It's incoherent.
so much of it, like things just happen,
Yeah.
and then they try to do some weird comedy set piece. This is before Oliver Hardy teamed up with.
Yeah, there's this overlong sequence where he's being chased by a bee,
Yeah.
and there's something about the Cowardly Lion character where he has to dress up like a cowardly lion.
Yeah, I
Something
don't.
like that. It's just
It
it
doesn't
makes
make
no
it doesn't make
sense.
any sense at all, and
Yeah.
this is the only version or only Oz story, only Oz film that's good.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there was the original in 25, there was Return to Oz, and then there was some animated thing that was just flat out horrible a few
You talking about
years
the
ago.
anime? There was an
The
anime
animated
that,
one. Yeah, like
yeah.
Dorothy in the Land of Oz or something like that. And then they made an animated series out of that. And
Mhm.
it's just that this is the only one that manages to get the story right, and they screw it up at the end.
There's a kookiness, and I use the word kooky. There's a kookiness to the Oz stories
Yo,
that
yeah,
no other film version ever absolutely gets right.
right.
There's just a bizarre way, and that's the thing I said when I walked out of that Disney prequel, is that I was just like, and even the sci-fi series Tin Man, I was just like, they're missing the point. They're missing the texture, the template of how these stories were constructed,
Right.
and it was just they've never gotten it right.
No, except
Ever.
here.
Right. That's pretty much all I got. What else you got?
That's pretty much all I got. What do we have coming up?
Well, next week we're going to dip our toes for the first time into the world of Wes Anderson.
Yes.
You have chosen next week is
I've chosen any really Wes Anderson movie from about 4 or 5. If you end up revisiting the Royal Tenenbaums and not liking it, it'll be something else. But for right now, it's the Royal Tenenbaums
it's
because
the Royal Tenenbaums.
that's my favorite Wes Anderson movie.
Let me put it this way. When it comes to Wes Anderson, I saw a few Wes Anderson movies and didn't like them. I didn't like Rushmore. I didn't
can't
like Bottle
imagine
Rocket.
that. I'm not a huge fan of Bottle Rocket to this day.
And I saw the Royal Tenenbaums in the theater and I didn't like it. It was only Moonrise Kingdom that I was a latecomer
Yeah.
to his work, really.
I think Royal Tenenbaums was my first one.
Mhm.
And I saw it. I was working at Blockbuster when it came out, and I saw it, and I'm like, this is amazing, and bought it.
Mhm.
And then I started getting into Wes Anderson.
I think I saw it on the exact same day. I remember I saw Royal Tenenbaums because I doubled up at the theater. I saw it on the exact same day that I saw A Beautiful Mind.
Oh,
And I think it was because they were both nominated for Oscars. and or it was Oscar season.
Royal
And
Tenenbaum's got a screenplay nomination.
okay, well that's why I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it. I didn't care for it. But later on, I did appreciate it. So I am looking forward to going back and revisiting it. I'm a Gene Hackman fan. Going all the way back to Superman.
Oh, God, Gene Hackman. And anyway, so that's coming up next time. We're also going to wedge in a special episode on Woodstock's 50th anniversary.
Yep.
And why that never happened, why that never worked out again.
Well, not in a positive way.
Well, that's
Didn't they just cancel? Didn't they just cancel
the 50th? Yeah,
the
because
50th?
the backers backed out, and then they were trying to get other backers, and
The backers of the backers backed out.
Right, then they were moving it down to like Maryland or something instead of in Woodstock, New York, and it's then they finally canceled it.
Yeah.
That was a whole. There's no repeating that. It was a happening and not an event. You can repeat an event.
As my father says, that was a big old booger.
But that's what we have coming up. Also a Blade Runner episode.
Because it's 2019.
Yeah, and we're gonna revisit some Kurosawa. We've got a whole bunch coming up before we hit our primary theme months, which are October, November, and December. That's about all we have, really, for the Wizard of Oz here. So you can find all of our works on iTunes, on YouTube, the Pod Bay Doors podcast.wordpress.com. We'll have everything that we've ever done. You can find us on Patreon. Throw a tip into our virtual tip jar at Patreon. We are at pod_bay, the same handle that we have on Twitter. We appreciate and thank you for listening, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been complete.